As you all are probably unfortunately aware, I'm a little bit of a Latin nerd. So for better or for worse for you all. And in the Latin, there's a connection that I've always found fascinating between glorification and clarification. That is, what makes something more clear is what will glorify it. In the Greek, this word that we hear in this gospel about glorify / clarification is related to teaching. It's doxology or doxa, which is where we get the word doctrine from. It's also where we get the word orthodoxy, that is right teaching. It's in the doxology that we all know, glory be to the Father and to the Son, etc., because it's making clear or glorifying, gloria, the Trinity. And so what does it mean that God glorifies / clarifies / teaches us clearly through his Son? I have glorified it and will glorify it again. Every single person here has 5 senses. Unless you have a 6th sense, all of us have 5. Right? Sight, touch, taste, smell, hearing. Every single person here also has 3 other parts: thinking, remembering, and acting, just memory, intellect, and will. And these parts are invisible. This is what we mean when we say that God has created both those things, visible and invisible. That is, yes, the angelic world, as it were, but also our souls. The ability to think and remember and acting. This is not some ghosty, spooky reality that God has kind of given to us. It's not a quasi-reality, kind of like the internet. The internet is really still part of the visible world. Now you need electronic microscopes and things like that to see the electricity, but we can go point at servers and say, internet, right? Internet. When we think iCloud, it's not some spooky substance out here or something invisible, really. We can go down to California, break into Apple, which we shouldn't do, right? Because that would be against something invisible. It would be justice, right? And say, iCloud. Right? There. And so talking about these thinking and remembering and acting, we can grow these capacities, or frankly not grow these capacities. I went out on a run recently without my phone, because sometimes it's just nice as a millennial to not have my phone attached to my hip all the time. And I thought to myself, I literally have no one's cell phone numbers down here memorized. Like, no one. I don't have Father Jim's cell phone number memorized. I don't have any parishioners' cell phones numbers memorized. I have, like, my parents' cell phone numbers memorized from when I lived with them, and I was in 8th grade because they haven't changed. But I thought to myself, if I get hit by a car, I'm going to call my mom? Like, she's really far away, and she doesn't know anybody's numbers down here, right? So I figured, okay, what I'm going to do if this happens, and it didn't, thank God, right? I was like, I'm going to call the parish, whose phone number I do have memorized, and then I'm going to tell them to use the emergency line to contact Benny so that someone could get in contact with me. I was like, this is bad, right? Like, this is not good. I have lost, in some ways, my ability to memorize. I have not grown my memory, at least in that sense. So sight, touch, taste, smell, hearing, thinking, remembering, acting. Sometimes you might hear someone say to you, well, I would believe in God if only he would just kind of write it on the clouds, then I'll believe, right? If he just kind of came down and kind of like an airplane, kind of made the clouds. I am here, right? Oh, look, I'll believe in God now. The reality is you probably wouldn't believe in God then, because you would think that there was something wrong with you. You would think that there was something wrong with your sight or your taste or your seeing or your memory or your intellect or your will. You'd say, am I really seeing that? And most of the time we see that this is actually what happens in the scriptures. When physical miracles happen, that is, miracles that happen to bodies, most of the time people say, wait, did that just really happen? Think of last week, man born blind. Jesus spits on the ground, rubs it on his eyes. The Pharisees are like, no, you weren't actually blind, though. That wasn't you, right? If you just wrote it on the clouds, I would believe. No, you wouldn't. You would kind of say to yourself, what? It would be so out of this world that our minds wouldn't be able to comprehend it. It would frankly be too much. There would be such a lack of something to compare it to, we wouldn't be able to approach it. This is what happens every time God reveals himself in his full majesty. People fall to the ground as if they were dead. Think of Elijah 6. Think of the first week of Lent with the Transfiguration. Think of the book of Revelation. Peter is so dumbstruck, he says, it's good that we're here. Let's make tents, right? Jesus is being transfigured in front of him. He is being fully glorified / clarified / being taught totally of who he is. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, oh my God, literally. Right? Perhaps you've had some of these moments. Many of us have. Maybe they're not as big as God revealing himself totally to us. Sometimes we get a glimpse of this and we go, oh my God, literally, like, oh my God. It would be too much. So what does God do to actually come down to our level? To not just give us a magic pill, but to give us something that will truly heal our whole body and our whole soul. See, God, in his miracles, whenever a physical miracle happens, he doesn't want to just heal our bodies, however good our bodies are. The healing of a body precedes often, or sometimes, the healing of a soul. This is the moment where God says, see, now, don't go and sin anymore. God desires to realign our souls, our thinking, our willing, our remembering. And he doesn't want to just realign them, he wants to sanctify them, to bring it up into the life of God, which is charity. And he doesn't do this without using the material world, all of our senses, to draw us into that relationship, to enter into something perceptible so that we can garner and understand it for ourselves. God makes clear his life in the Son, and he continues this redemption in the sacraments, and thus, by extension, to all of those who receive his life. As we say at the Paschal Vigil that we'll celebrate here in a couple weeks, the light is expanded, not dimmed, as it gets given to each of us at our baptism. When we hear in the prophecies of the first reading, no longer will they have need to teach their friends and relatives how to know the Lord. All from least to greatest shall know me. This is now. This is now. Father, glorify me. I have glorified it and will glorify it again. When I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw everyone to myself. Often we might think, like, Jesus is like the grain that dies and rises and produces new life, in a sense. But it's more accurate to say the grain that dies and produces new life has been an eternal analogy for Christ, not the other way around. And it's not even perfect because, see, Christ sustains the grain that dies. Remember, he is the vine, we are the branches. He produces more of himself, little Christs, through baptism and adoption. And where he is, that is in heaven, is where he desires all of us to be. Which is why he still gives us signs and wonders, perceptible things to draw us to himself. He does this in the place called the church. Where does this leave us? Holiness. Father, what should we do? Holiness. Not easy. And we always have to remember that holiness first reminds us not that we are good, but that God has chosen. And from this God having chosen, a new life is formed, a new morality, a new creation, that whoever loves his life will lose it, and whoever hates his life in this world will preserve it for eternal life, that whoever serves me, not Baal, not Jeff Bezos, not Bill Gates, must follow me, which is to the cross. And where I am, there also will my servant be. And that this new morality, this new way of being, holiness, uniting ourselves to Christ, is that which then ultimately produces much fruit.